My name is Aman Rajabali. I represent the National HRD Network Pune chapter. On behalf of the entire team, our committee, subcommittee members at the Pune chapter, I welcome all of you. We have good number of people joining in us today. As always, this session, Upavan, uh, brainchild of Advait and Eklavya. We always look forward to this monthly session between the lines. अभी तो इनफैक्ट हम अंदर टीम में बात करते रहते हैं कि this is not between the lines. This is probably borderless. We have people across India joining in, and it is such a pleasure to have Mr. Deepak Iyer, Jennifer Fischer, and we also have one more gentleman, Mr. Madhukar, but he is unable to join in. Our colleague Darpan is ensuring that he gets the technicalities sorted out. National HRD Network is a body of HR professionals founded more than 3 decades ago. This is the Pune chapter. We have our own website. We are on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, everywhere. Why I'm saying this is that I'm asking all of you to join in, support us, help us, be connected with us. We have been organizing such and many other programs. We have some very interesting sessions lined up, including an entertainment session coming on the 5th of July. We will be sending on the invitation and intimation to all of you. If you are not on our mailing list, you may please write into us. Our details are available on Google, anywhere you may find us. Please stay connected. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best. Enjoy the session. Thank you. Over to you, Advait.
Thank you, Aman, and good evening and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to Between the Lines session. My name is Advait Kurlekar. Happy to have NHRDN, National HRD Network, as our partner for nearly 2 years now. Just to give a quick background, Apohan is a management consulting company. We are based in Pune, in India, and we've been doing this program called Between the Lines session every month for the last nearly 3 years now, out of which nearly 1.5 years, 2 years, NHRDN has been kind to support us. The format of the program is that every month we pick up a management book, which we believe is a good book to read, a bestseller, and we summarize that book. And many of you know my colleague Eklavya, who will very shortly present the summary of today's book. Every book has insights, every book has learnings, every book has knowledge. And based on those insights, we invite people from the industry and we conduct a panel discussion on the topic. So this time this book is a book on the growth of Instagram as a brand. And because it's a brand, all of us are aware of.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, welcome Madhukar to the panel. We just started a minute ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. Since Instagram is a brand, we thought it would be a good idea to have expert panelists and talk about brand and the revolution, and should I say revolution. So I'll come back to the panelists a little later, where I'll formally introduce all of them. So it's about half an hour of Eklavya's presentation and 1 hour or so on the panel discussion. And in between the panel, I will take some questions. Since this is a webinar or an online session, request if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll take them somewhere in the middle. And we'll, of course, time permitting, we'll take some more questions at the end. So without much ado, and my apologies because we have to start a little bit late. There was some technical issue, as always happens in webinars and online sessions. But I think we are now glitch-free, hopefully, and we'll continue to do that. So without much ado, I would request my colleague Eklavya to take us to the book and the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Advait. Let me just share my screen. I hope it's visible.
Yeah.
Great. Before we begin, here's a social media primer for those of you who are like me and cannot really distinguish one social media platform from the other. Personally, for me, it's a bit like following the upcoming American general elections as an outsider. I know for sure that there's probably something good about both the candidates, but I'll be damned if I can lay my finger on it. All I can vouch for is that, like political manifestos, your social media profile also says a lot about who you are not. Okay, with that out of the way, and hopefully all of us are on the same page, moving on to today's topic. 8 years ago, Facebook acquired Instagram for $1 billion, which at the time rightly seemed like an outrageous amount of money for a startup mobile app with 12 employees and not a single penny to show in profits. Now, today, Instagram is estimated to be worth over $100 billion. Bloomberg News reporter and first-time author Sarah Fryer decided to write a book to find an answer to a question that had been nagging her since the time the deal went down. Why did Mark Zuckerberg want to buy Instagram in the first place? Personally, my guess is he probably didn't know that he can download it from the App Store free of charge. But what really led him to decide that he needed to acquire this company as soon as possible, and not just buy it, mind you, but also commit to keeping it independent? The only answer that she received to this question was a terse email from Zuckerberg, which read, "It's simple, it was a great service, and we wanted to help it grow." So that's all we are likely to hear from the horse's mouth. Sarah had to rely on numerous conversations and discreet interviews with the Instagram founders, employees, and Facebook employees to narrate the story of a company within a company. This book, frankly, it's the culmination of her attempt to chronicle the meteoric growth of Instagram with, fortunately, no filters applied. Now, we all might lament that our obsession with social media is nearing psychotic proportions nowadays, but the irony is that we choose the same platforms even to vent out our ostensible ire. We are no longer just sharing or broadcasting our lives online, we are actually living an Insta life in pursuit of that elusive reward of digital validation. Instagram has become an all-pervasive tool of social relevance for a substantial population that is in fact striving for recognition through likes, through comments, and followers. One might even say that Instagram is like a mirror on ourselves and allows us to contribute our own experiences to the understanding of this world, to how we view it. And if you really break it down, then at its very core, it satiates our voyeuristic desires of peeping into someone else's life and how they experience it through their own phone cameras. As we continue to forge deeper and more meaningful relationships with our mobile phone, this book offers us the rare chance to reflect on how we got here and what it means. Instagram was probably one of the first apps to fully exploit our relationships with our phones, and it ushered in a world where we view every single thing through a camera lens now. To appreciate the scale of Instagram and the rise of Instagram celebrity or influencer culture, as it's popularly known, consider this, that there are millions of people and brands who have more Instagram followers than the New York Times has subscribers. That has got to count for something. And marketing through these people, who are basically running personal media companies, is now a multi-billion-dollar industry in itself. In fact, Andy Warhol must be turning in his grave and willing to rephrase this famous prophecy of his, because in today's day and age, everyone will be famous or world famous in 15 minutes rather than for 15 minutes. And I used to think being famous on social media is somewhat similar to being rich in Monopoly, but thankfully, the Kardashian family enlightened me. We don't really need to look beyond this famous or infamous family to get a sense of how Instagram has fueled careers and even built celebrity empires. Instagram has transformed the Kardashian family into a 24/7 brand promotion cycle, and they have daily, hourly Instagram schedules of the dozens of brands that they are paid to promote. And that is, of course, in addition to the own brands, which they have launched as a family. With a combined reach of over half a billion followers, they are possibly the most influential marketing tool that ever walked the face of this planet. I'm sure all of us are well aware that Kylie Jenner became the youngest self-made billionaire at the age of 21 when she decided to start a lipstick business purely through her Instagram feed without any physical product existing or available in stores. And it took roughly 30 seconds for the entire product to be sold out when she posted the link on her lipstick launch. Now, Instagram, how did this really come about? What was the genesis of this app that we all have grown to love and endure in equal measure? It grew out of Kevin Systrom's love of photography. So the gentleman that you see on the left of the screen right now, that's Kevin Systrom, the founder. And yeah, it started out basically due to his passion for photography, which also led to him spending a year in Florence, Italy during his Stanford college days to study photography. It was in Florence that he stumbled upon square, vintage-looking photos that would define Instagram in its early days. And while he was still in college, he was actually approached by Mark Zuckerberg, who took him out for lunch one day and offered him a job to develop a tool to add photos on this new site that he had just launched. It was called the Facebook.com. And the conversation was going really well until the check came and Zuckerberg's credit card was declined for payment. Suffice to say that Systrom did not take him up on his generous offer, and he chose to work with Google instead. He spent a couple of years over there. And later on, in 2010, Systrom started working on his own app, which he initially named Bourbon after his favorite spirit. And this app basically showed people where their friends were partying in real time. So it was basically an app which combined your location and photo sharing. He managed to get early stage investments from VC investors, but there was one condition attached, that he has to bring in a co-founder. So enter Mike Krieger, his junior from Stanford. Soon after Krieger joined, they decided to pivot Bourbon and remove most of the features to focus solely and exclusively on photo sharing. The eureka moment came about when Systrom was walking along the beach with his girlfriend and now wife, Nicole, and she said that she won't continue using his app anymore because her photos did not come out as good as another friend of theirs who was also using the same app, Bourbon app. Systrom told her that the reason was because that other friend of theirs, he was actually using some filter apps also to enhance the images that he took from his mobile phone. So she casually remarked that, well, if that's the case, you should probably add filters to your app also. The rest, as they say, is history. Bourbon was officially rechristened as Instagram, which is a portmanteau of instant and telegram. And Instagram managed to hit the sweet spot, which was provide filters so that people can make their photos and by extension, their lives also look more appealing than they actually are. This is the very first photo that Systrom posted on Instagram. This is the very first photo that was ever uploaded on Insta. And it probably paved the way for a whole breed of aspiring photographers who are unfortunately in denial. When the app went live, more than 25,000 people downloaded it within the first 24 hours, crashing Instagram servers totally. So it comes as no surprise that within a month after launch, Instagram had grown to 1 million users. 9 months later, the number was up to 7 million. And Instagram became so popular and widespread that they had to push updates on the App Store pretty much every couple of weeks. It was being downloaded with such a frenetic pace. Since they didn't have time to write a detailed description of what was new in every release, on every update that they were pushing onto the App Store, they came up with a catchphrase which is so ubiquitous now: bug fixes and performance improvement. So this term was actually coined by them because they didn't really have the time to sit and type out in the description field every time what was changing since the last release. And now, of course, I think most of the apps worldwide use these simple words to camouflage what really goes on behind the scenes. And the company continued to scale up, and investors were now lined up outside the door, offering them bagfuls of money, which they were more than happy to accept. Apart from certain people, like they did not want any celebrities giving them money. So Ashton Kutcher famously offered them quite a sizable amount to become an investor, but they had to turn him down because they did not want to get any kind of celebrity monetization going on at that stage. And incidentally, one of the angel investors in Instagram was Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter. Systrom knew him from his time as an intern at a company called Audio, which later became Twitter. So they both were working at Audio back in 2005 or 6, and they both knew each other since then. They were good friends, and Dorsey later on expressed a strong interest in acquiring Instagram when he came back as the CEO of Twitter. And Twitter made a formal offer to the tune of $500 million. This was in 2012, early 12. But Systrom declined the offer, much to Dorsey's disappointment. In fact, Jack Dorsey felt so betrayed that Instagram sold to Facebook instead of Twitter that he deleted the app, and he has not made a single post since 2012. In the meantime, large and small brands alike realized that they could not afford to be missing in action from Instagram. So businesses that were craving for our attention, like hotels or restaurants or consumer brands, changed the way that they design their services and market their products purely to cater to our new visual filters and to be Instagram worthy. In fact, if I recollect, she writes about how she interviewed these university students in London who explained her that a higher Instagram follower count means you're more likely to be selected for a leadership role on campus. Or how young girls in Los Angeles who were not yet of legal drinking age were being invited regularly by club promoters to attend exclusive parties or product launches or some kind of events within the club simply because of the considerable clout on Instagram. Once they put a photo that they were there, you know that the place is gram worthy. And the next big bang came in the form of endorsements by celebrities, not the monetary sort, but simply by celebrities coming on and using the app very frequently. One of the first guys to do that was Justin Bieber. So that time he was probably 16 or 17 years old and at the peak of his popularity. When Justin Bieber joined Instagram, young girls obviously across the world followed suit. He was bringing in something like 50 followers a minute. And Bieber naturally decided to monetize the opportunity. He called up Systrom and insisted that he should be allowed to either invest or be paid for the content that he's uploading, failing which he will stop using Instagram. Systrom politely declined, and Bieber actually followed through on his threat and quit the platform. But then his girlfriend at that time, Selena Gomez, she loved to use Instagram, and their relationship was obviously the talk of the town. Needless to say, Bieber was soon back on the app within a couple of weeks and overloaded Instagram's infrastructure to such an extent that the company had to devote half a server solely to his account's activity. That is how big this whole celebrity endorsement resulted in terms of Instagram taking that big leap. So in terms of what were the key ingredients that Instagram managed to perfect while they were still in the early formative years, and we are still talking about maybe the first 1 year or so. So the first thing obviously was open it to select users. This is something which we see commonly now being done. It was being done earlier also by Gmail to great effect. The other thing obviously is getting brands to use it as a service platform. And they managed to get plenty of brands in the early days, right? From Starbucks to Marriott Hotels and a number of other big brands. They were all there within the first month or so itself. And of course, you need to get celebrities to use and promote your service without hopefully paying them. Then finally, once you have all these hooks in place, that's the time when you go mainstream. You open it up for all of the public, basically who's waiting in keen anticipation. And post that, you really don't have to do much apart from sort of sit back and ensure that you continue providing the same experience that you were providing initially, because now the network effect really starts to kick in. But mind you, again, like all other iconic brands' origin stories, a strong product was the backbone actually of the soaring success which Instagram enjoyed. Because if you think about it, Instagram probably managed to give people that rare gift of expression and also escapism. Okay, cut to 2012. Facebook enters the scene with $1 billion and a promise that Instagram would be allowed to remain independent. Now, to answer the initial question of why did Zuckerberg shell out such an obscene amount of money to acquire Insta, the answer that is being theorized by Sarah Fryer is that Zuckerberg was extremely paranoid and continues to be extremely paranoid of competing with Instagram. So he preferred to buy it out instead. Rather than compete with them out in the marketplace, he felt it was much better for his survival and for his own company's growth that they get into bed with them and keep them closer than anybody else. So that is one of the theories. And again, she goes on to substantiate it. And she really delves deep into the psyche of both Zuckerberg and Kevin Systrom to show that how, when there is an intersection of capitalism and ego, when there is an intersection or there is a sort of a melting pot of genius and ego, then the decisions that come out are not really favorable for anybody, including the public. So the relationship between Zuckerberg and the founders was always a bit tense. Firstly, because their own aesthetic sensibilities did not overlap much. Instagram defied Facebook in certain ways, which helped it remain true to its initial philosophy of being a venue for different perspectives and creativity and curiosity. So they shied away from using Facebook's spammy tactics like sending out excessive notifications or emails saying that people you might know, or adding tools like hyperlinks in a post, or resharing someone else's post the way you can do on Facebook or Twitter. They totally eschewed all of these Facebook tactics, all of these Twitter tactics, because they wanted to stay true to their own, what Systrom likes to call his pristine philosophy. It went to the extent that one of the first clashes, ego clashes, was when Systrom decided that he did not appreciate the posters which were placed in the Facebook office. So when they moved to Facebook offices, he did not appreciate the fact that there were posters lined up on the walls, which basically sent out a message that getting things done is better than getting them perfect. Now, this was totally against his own philosophy, against his ethos. So that was one of the first decisions that he took, which did not go down well with Zuckerberg. And again, you can imagine the kind of egos that you're dealing with over here and the repercussions and implications of such subtle tactics. So the power struggle between Zuckerberg and Systrom came to a head after Instagram reached the magical mark of 1 billion monthly users in mid 2018. That's why everything breaks at a billion. Zuckerberg decided that, okay, now Insta has grown too good for comfort. He started to prioritize Facebook over Instagram. And first and foremost, he deleted a feature that automatically linked Facebook users to their friends' Instagram pages. This immediately led to some kind of a decline in terms of the Instagram traction. Then he also prevented the company from hiring more staff. And he took a number of other decisions like resource allocation, not giving them enough funds, basically squeezing them dry, and also certain other more survival or existential threats, which primarily comprised of not giving them the kind of moderation resources that Facebook enjoyed. Without moderation resources available, without there being considerable oversight, Instagram would not be able to avoid objectionable content coming up on their platform with alarming frequency. So that was the last straw for the founders. And finally, they parted ways. They unfriended from Facebook in late 2018. To this date, the official party line remains that they differed over the direction of the product and were stepping down to return to their creative roots and once again reignite their curiosity. They haven't really done that, frankly, in the last couple of years because they've been pretty much incommunicado. They've gone into an incognito mode, and they just recently resurfaced again during the coronavirus lockdown period in US when they came out with a website for real-time tracking of COVID cases in the country. So it remains to be seen what steps they take next. But what is true as of now is that one man controls a global network of 2.5 billion users on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And as far as Instagram is concerned, it's clear that there are going to be now internal struggles for supremacy. Advertising on Instagram is likely to increase considerably as Sarah says that according to her calculation, Zuckerberg is now in the mode of seeking a return on his investment. And while Instagram fortunately wasn't really tainted by Facebook scandals post 2016, it is obviously facing more moderation issues than earlier, and there are growing concerns over privacy in Instagram as well. Okay, now if candid behind the scenes business journalism is your cup of tea, then this this deeply researched and very riveting book should definitely be on your reading list for this year. We have all subconsciously played a role in increasing Instagram's formidable and at times terrifying reach that has changed society, it has changed culture, it has influenced business, it has changed the broad contours of how we define fame today, and it has absolutely, certainly, drastically, and perhaps irreparably changed the way in which we communicate. So we kind of owe it to ourselves to be a part of this conversation. If Instagram is creating and also reflecting our values to a certain extent, we should know a little more about the mindset and motivations of the men who have created the app. And that is the compelling narrative that has been stitched together beautifully on this book. So that's it from my side. I'm Eklavya Malhotra, and I hope you enjoyed the book summary. Over to Advait now for the main part of today's session. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Eklavya. I know last couple of weeks how difficult it has been to sort of go through the book again and again and summarize it and sort of, in this last 30 minutes or so. And especially for someone who neither has an Insta account nor a Facebook account. So for somebody who doesn't have both, it's a very fantastic task that you've done. Thank you again. And,
we were not supposed to reveal it.
Okay. Well, I've done that now. So coming to the business side of things, it's my honor and privilege to formally introduce our esteemed panelists for the day. First and foremost, please join me in welcoming Madhukar Kamath. People in the advertising fraternity really don't need any formal introduction of Madhukar, but still he's been at the helm of DDB Mudra Group, Mudra and now DDB Mudra Group for the last 25 years or so. Now, of course, retired, and like he told me when I called him for this, I pulled him out of retirement in terms of what he does, but that's, of course, I'm sure he's joking about it. So he's Chairman Emeritus at DDB Mudra. He's also the chairman in his new avatar. Secondly, he started a startup, no longer a startup, but a successful company called Multiplier Brand Solutions, of which he's a chairman. He's also chairman of ABC, the Audit Bureau of Circulation in India, and he serves on the board of Plan India and Radio City, which of course is a very leading FM player in India. Close to his retirement, I think he got awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by Advertising Agency Association of India. And as I said, he's a veteran and a guru as far as advertising and communication industry in India in particular, but globally as well. So thank you, Madhukar, for, in your own words, coming out of retirement and spending an hour with us here today.
Thank you, Advait. Gurus normally go to the hills, but you pulled me out here, so that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Joining me from Dubai is Jennifer Fischer. She is currently the Chief Innovation Officer at TBWA RAD. TBWA also is part of the Omnicom group, like DDP. TBWA RAD is a network agency that sort of controls operations for TBWA in the MENA region, which is Middle East and North Africa region, with over 1,000 kind of employees. Prior to joining TBWA, she's worked in fine dining, beauty, mobile, and of course advertising industry. I believe she was in Ogilvy and has worked on the branding and branding evolution, and I would say revolution for global brands like Google, Apple, IKEA, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, Volkswagen, and of course local brands like the Executive Council, Dubai Tourism, and Expo 2020. She is an avid reader, literally a book a week. I don't know whether this book was part of your 52 so far, Jennifer, but not yet. But now you know what the book is, and I'm sure you'll pick it up. And thanks again for sparing your time on your weekend, which is a Friday evening there in Dubai. And we look forward to your views.
Thank you
Deepak.
very much for inviting me to join Between the Line. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, likewise. And last but not the least, we have Deepak Iyer, who's currently the president of Mondelez India Foods Limited, which popularly is everybody knows as Cadbury's India, now of course the new name. Uh, Deepak is a old friend of mine. We go back to our business school when we were classmates together. And I'm not going to go there, Deepak, when we ask questions to you in about our school days. But since then, Deepak has served on over 17 years in PepsiCo in India, South Asia, Africa, and of course, I think Lebanon also, right, Deepak? Yeah, okay. So Lebanon, and then of course he was the CEO and managing director at Wrigley's, a brief stint in Bharti Extra, and now of course last couple of years in Mondelez. So welcome, Deepak. Welcome all of you for this discussion.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure.
yeah, and look forward. So maybe Madhukar, I would start with you just as a easy question to you first. In all your long years, do you have any brand that I would say you admire the most, and what could be the reasons for that?
Frankly speaking, if you ask me, it's not a question of admiring brands over my career, but as an individual, are there any brands I admire? And there are two types of brands. One brand is definitely a physical one, which is amongst all, I turn around and say Apple is one of my favorite brands, and I admire it the way they built it. I also admire Indigo for the way they built the brand. I'm not discussing the company, but I'm talking of the way the brand's been built. So these are two quick answers. But before that, Advait, I just want to acknowledge that Eklavya did a very good job. And I've come to the conclusion, and particularly after your introduction of Jennifer, that I'll outsource my reading either to Jennifer or Eklavya and keep getting the knowledge very quickly.
Happy to be of service, Madhukar.
Thank you. Jennifer, Madhukar mentioned Apple, and I know you worked on Apple as a brand. So before I come to that part of the session, which are your most sort of admired brands? And again, it need not be something that you've necessarily worked on, but without bias, yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously Apple would be one of those, but Nike is also one. I think something that they both have in common is the consistency of the communication over the years, and what they stand for, and the constant innovation. I think that's it all starts with a strong product, right? And I think recently, for instance, remember Nike Vaporfly that actually allowed Eliud Kipchoge to run the first marathon under 2 hours. I mean, this is like an amazing example of innovation in sports, right? So that would be one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't say as a amateur runner. Yeah, I've been keeping track of that as well. I'll come back to you on that. Deepak, anything that you think you admire, and, other than Cadbury?
Yeah. No, it is Cadbury Dairy Milk. It is CDM brand that millions of Indians have actually had. It's the first brand that brings a smile to your face. Today, it's the most trusted brand across categories in India, according to Economic Times Brand Equity. And what's the point of living in India if you can't say Kuch Meetha over there?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Okay. So maybe I'll continue with you, Deepak. Like you said, Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye and CDM, it's like the first love for any kind of thing. On a very different scale, it's the old monk of chocolates kind of thing. Now, sometimes, now your company has renamed itself from Cadbury to Mondelez because of the acquisition and the breakup. So, companies produce, start doing products or services, and then they brand them. Is there a time when sort of brands become larger than life than the product or the service that they represent? And if yes, is it a good thing or is it not a good thing, according to you as a brand owner?
Let me answer from the reverse. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing for any brand to ascend the level of a category. See, over a period of time, great brands continue to deliver their promise and their service to consumers. These are normally brands with a very strong sense of purpose as well. And yes, I can think of many names here. I mean, one is Maggie, and is almost synonymous with noodles. Think of Bisleri. It was synonymous with packaged drinking water. Think of Xerox. I mean, any scan was called a Xerox in India, right? Amul with butter, or Cadbury's with chocolates in India. I think brands which serve consumers well over long periods of time almost get to become synonymous with the category. They transcend to this exalted position of service that the category provides, and also the other way to look at it, the need that the category services. You know? So to that extent, I think is a good thing.
Okay. Jennifer,
Advait, if I have to just build on what Deepak rightly said, you know, if you look at the interbrand most valuable brands, okay, you'll notice that most brands in the top 10 there, their brand value is often higher than their turnover, which is why several people have started taking the brand values onto the annual report. Yeah, they started adding on brand values onto their balance sheets. So it's a very good thing that if a brand transcends the product that it was. And Cadbury's is a brilliant example.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is it because of the intangible that why the brand becomes more than the turnover in terms of the brand value, like you said, Madhukar?
See, a brand.
And how
See, a brand is a composite. A brand is a composite of a brand is a composite of everything. It's the relationship with the customer. It's the way the brand is seen by the consumer. The brand is consumed by the customer. The way it lives over the years. Because a brand is a living organism. It's not an identity. So this brand has grown over the years, and so the brand values of Nike, Coke, and everybody else, Apple and everybody else, I wouldn't say it's got intangible. These are tangible. They can be measured. They can be valued. So a brand becomes definitely bigger and more valuable than what it started out as. Definitely, it's a good thing.
Sure. Okay. So Jennifer, would in your experience companies actually then strive and work towards ensuring that the brand becomes bigger than the turnover, bigger, larger than life, and as a communications agency, how would you work with them?
Yeah, this is what we work towards every day, right? In an advertising agency, growing the brands of our clients. I mean, in the end, you know, when you look back at the original role of the brands, why did brands start to exist, right? It was this seal of constant quality, right? You would go and you would know that if you buy this bread or this jar of olive oil that has, you know, this artisan brand, you know, you have the quality that is always there. And today when you buy, you know, Oreo biscuits or Maggie or Coca-Cola, like, you know exactly what to expect, right? And that's the role, the first level of the role of branding, right? And so the first stage is that bond of trust, right? And obviously this is a huge asset for manufacturers because you know, people might not necessarily just buy, you know, a pack of noodles, you know, without having, you know, this guarantee that, you know, they get almost like to relive the same experience every single time that they buy it, right? That's how you become the standard, right? It's between the consistent quality of the product with, you know, the branding that is there, right? And that's at the most basic level, obviously, without going into the higher level of emotional connection that we built above and beyond that.
Sure.
I promise, I promise not to interrupt anymore, but what she said sparked off something phenomenal about what a brand can do. She spoke of trust and what Deepak spoke of. Let's take two brands, Cadbury's and Maggie. Look at how the worst crises that they went into, they came out of it phenomenally well and significantly better. I mean, I'm sure people can talk about the value that the brand had, the trust that the brand had, that enabled them to survive. Any other company would have gone under, either Cadbury's at that time or Nestle a few years ago. But look at what a brand was able to do.
I mean, we can't leave Deepak without touching on the Cadbury issue, so I'll come to that. But yeah, I mean, all of you said, quality and trust are the two kind of basic kind of tenets because of which the brand value grows. Jennifer, coming back to you again, is it easier for brands to gain trust of their customers if it's a product versus a service brand? Or is service more difficult, in terms of gaining trust and increasing their brand value? Have you seen any kind of difference there?
Gaining trust is never easy, but for sure, as a product, you need to get it right the first time, and then, people just get to enjoy it. As a service, you have a human element that is much stronger, right? So creating the culture and being able to replicate the quality over and over is harder and required a different kind of effort. So I would say service is a little bit more complicated than products. At the same time, obviously, the different categories. This is where the trust matters more or less, right? For example, you might be ready. Well, you might love Cadbury chocolates. You might be ready, to try for 5 dirhams or the equivalent in rupees, a new chocolate brand. Even if you don't know what experience you're gonna have, but if you're buying a phone, or a car, you're much less likely to, be ready to put your trust into a brand that hasn't built that trust yet. So obviously, the level of trust also differs on the different kind of categories and the level of engagement. I know that in service, especially when it comes to professional services, the level of trust is even more important than in consumer services. Because often when you make a decision, we were talking about Xerox earlier, right? You make a decision for your business, with a company like a Xerox or an IBM, you put also your reputation on the line, the company's reputation, satisfaction, your job security on the line if you make, bad decisions. So usually also in those type of services, the level of trust is even more important.
Sure.
Actually, I mentioned,
Deepak,
you talked about product and service, there's something called an organization. So now I used to sell insurance. Your product didn't matter, your service didn't matter. It is the name of the company. Correct? Because end of the day, I'm buying a product from either Bharti AXA or ICICI or HDFC, and what do these banks and institutions mean for you, right? So it's possibly a bigger consideration than the name or the product or the service.
Yes, but then is that a question where, when it comes to product, Deepak, then there is a brand, but when it comes to service, more often than not, it's a corporate or the company brand, like you mentioned. Like you gave and then let's come back to what Madhukar raised in terms of experience of Cadbury in those trying times when there was serious issue. So there are three aspects to that. One is it a question of brand is more associated to a product, and a service when it comes to that, it is the company takes the bulk of the kind of ownership as far as the brand and the trust is concerned. Second, Jennifer mentioned about 5 dirhams or whatever. So is it a issue in terms of the unit price of the product, in terms of building trust or building kind of a quick relationship with your customers? Does that help? These two questions, and then we'll come back to the Cadbury issue later.
Yeah, so Advait, I couldn't hear you very well, but what I think I heard you say is that is it a question? Is the outlay in terms of the price that a consumer is paying? Is that a consideration for building the product trust? Is that what I say?
Yeah, is it easier to build trust with the unit price lesser?
Sorry, can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Yeah. Is it easier to build trust if the unit price is slightly lesser than if you're selling a high value product? That's one. And second part was in terms of when you talk of service, is it when you say brand, does it go to the company name rather than, and when you're talking about product, you can actually associate a brand name with a product rather than the company.
Okay, so maybe it's a bit of both, Advait. That is contextual depending on different categories. But the one thing is, as a consumer, irrespective of whether you're paying 1 rupee, $1, or $1 million to buy something, it's your money. the consumer will always look for trust in everything that she or he buys. I mean, we can't say that I'm selling a 1 rupee candy and hence, I will get away by giving suboptimal quality, for example, right? So to me, I think it's a brand, and brand is built on trust. And I think trust doesn't care too much about, what's the price, because every penny of the consumer is very, very precious to her or him. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is whether, it goes to the company vis-a-vis products. Contextual advice. So I think if I go back to the controversy that we had, I think the simple way we came out of it is we said, okay, we're not going to figure out who made the mistake and point fingers. We know there's a challenge, and we need to solve the challenge end to end. We will not point fingers, and we will go one step even further to ensure that even in the unlikely event it can happen again, we future-proof it so well it never happens. I mean, those are the simple principles we followed many years ago when we had this challenge, and I think those principles remain same even today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I may, Advait, to respond to that, like a brand that is in the service category and that has built really well that sense of trust when they enter a market, especially at the beginning, is Deliveroo. So Deliveroo, for instance, when they entered the Middle East, and they would promise a delivery time in 20 minutes or in 30 minutes, right? And if they were 5 minutes late, you would get like 30% of your order money back, without asking anything. They would send you an apology message. They would call you also, and that was the case, every single time you ordered for the first 3 months, until you really felt like they were, extremely, extremely reliable. Then, once the habits and the image of trust has been established, it became more business as usual, because of course it's not, viable, but still, you knew that the reliability factor is a defining element of the brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Madhukar, there's a discussion on trust, there's a discussion of reliability, and if I remember right, one of the ways Cadbury's, for example, used was endorsement. I think Amitabh Bachchan came out in those ads at that point in time saying that Cadbury is safe and there's no issue, and it was a kind of thing. So coming to the larger topic in terms of endorsements, and I think Iyer's presentation also had something in terms of the influencers and the endorsement. So does that go a long way in improving or increasing the trust factor or the reliability factor of the brand when a brand uses social media or even a celebrity, whether it's a film star or a sports star or that kind of thing?
Okay, Advait, let me separate out the two because you asked me about brands, trust, and then you said about endorsement. Now, if you're implying there are endorsements essential for a brand to build trust, no.
Okay.
They're not essential because brands can be built even without celebrities, very clearly. There's no debate about that at all. But at the same time, if you're to use endorsement, if it's done well, it definitely adds. It's one more task. It's like if you're talking of an individual as a brand, you turn around and say, I'm somebody's son. Then you use that. Or I came in from this school when you're building a personal branding, or I'm working in this company. So you use that example very well. You might be a great guy, but if you say that you're a great guy working in Cadbury's, people might smile at you more than if you say you're a great guy working elsewhere. So use that as an endorsement. Endorsement actually adds on only if used well. And in Cadbury's, I know of that story. I mean, Bharat Puri, I related it, and Piyush Pandey have related it many times, that he had to go in, they took him and they made him check the product. They did everything else. And once they did it, everything was wonderful. So it fitted exceedingly well.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking with you, Madhukar, does it help in a particular kind of products or brand, this endorsement sort of thing, to help the brand gain more trust, or it is
no. It's I would believe that it's a creative task, whether it's for a Rolls-Royce engine or Mercedes-Benz or something that goes for 2 rupees. It's how you use that endorser. Why are you using an endorser? How you use him or her. That's the way you go about it.
Okay. Okay. Jennifer, sorry, you were saying something?
Add a couple of points here. Are you saying something, Jennifer? You want to go ahead first? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Deepak. I'll go after.
Yeah.
First, go ahead. After you.
All right. I think celebrities first are what we call accelerators, right? There's lots of ways that we can accelerate a brand, right? Whether it's a sponsorship, partnerships with other brands, it's not the, the answer to all of this. I would disagree that there aren't categories where celebrities and influencers don't have a bigger impact. I think across all categories, to Madhukar's point, with Rolls-Royce, a celebrity can help build the image. But I think there's some categories, like for example, I've seen this in the beauty business, right? One influencer posts a product and you actually immediately see a spike in sales, right? So there's some categories where you see this this impact a lot more, right? In beauty and fashion, for instance. And then from a cultural perspective, there's some markets where celebrities and influencers have a bigger impact, right? We look, for instance, at individualistic versus collectivist markets, where in collectivist markets, often social norms and thus social mimicking, matters more within the society. So markets like the Middle East or India, are more collectively driven as well. So usually, celebrities, influencers play a stronger role and can be more effective than in markets like, France or Sweden or Germany, where it's more individualistic and they play a lesser role.
Good point.
So culture plays a big role in this, when you're saying individualistic versus kind of thing. Okay, I'll come back to that. Deepak, you're saying something, yeah.
So I was just saying, typically celebrities, just 2-3 random points on this one. One is celebrities break clutter for your advertising. So it also makes you stand out, that's the roles that they do. 2, they build stature for your brand. And provided you sign up with celebrities who are as heavyweight as your brand or heavier than your brand. Right? I think, and that's a very important consideration. I think I'll make a separate point on that separately. But the fact is, you can compare.
You said celebrities break the clutter, but when you have the same celebrity in 20 different ads, when you're watching a 1-hour program, how does that break clutter?
It's a good point. If you're seeing 2,000 ads in that break and you're seeing 20 celebrities, it's still a clutter. So I don't think every ad has a celebrity. So it sort of relatively breaks the clutter. And the celebrities emote very well. I think many of them who are used to acting actually put out some outstanding advertisements out there, right? So yes, there is. Equally, let's look at a category like cola. It's not an acquired. It is not a natural for anybody. It's an acquired taste. So what are you selling? You're selling the magic of cola, correct? So how do you sell the magic of cola? I mean, you have to associate with wannabe stars, wannabe platforms, so music, football, cricket, celebrities. I mean, that's how you bring the magic of cola out, right? Look at the stars that Pepsi has had, for example, in the country, or any cola major for that matter of fact. I think this, it works in that context as well, right? But the only thing to remember, and that's the point I was saying, who are you associating with? So very often we would try to take this route of placing insurance-like bets, that here is a new upcoming star and I genuinely feel she or he will be a great bet for us. I think, and to quote Don King, the controversial boxing promoter of the yesteryears, and when one of the companies was asking him a question saying, do you think it really is worth paying so many dollars for a star? He made a very nice statement. He said, remember, after the fight, do you want to find a guy on the mat or do you want him standing? Right? And that is what you pay for. Correct? I think it's a wonderful way to bring this principle alive.
Sure. Okay. I'll come back to that point, Deepak. Come back to you. Madhukar.
I can't resist but mention that let's take two very valuable brands, Apple and Nike. One uses celebrities, one doesn't use celebrities. So this is an example to prove that you can, if you get it right, you have to get it right. It's not very easy. There's no formula. You can do that. Two fantastic brands.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Okay. Jennifer, we talked about brands when we talk of products, and normally it is FMCG or consumer products. But here's a question in terms of B2B, and you've worked with, some of the clients are in the B2B space, or the brands are a good space, we should say, with the Foundation. The Expo 2020 is not exactly a B2C brand. So how does branding work when you're looking at this kind of very different kind of company or a product or a service or a concept?
Well, in the B2B category, the first thing is usually trust as well, right? So it's, you start from the same point, you have different channels, you have different type of messages, but in the end, branding is ensuring the belief of your audience in the company, finding, the meaning, what's meaningful to them and what's meaningful to you, and being able to kind of build the brand on where this matches. And that's very similar in the B2B space. Obviously, you look at different channels, more direct marketing, sometimes even one-on-one, discussing directly. If you're targeting CEOs of a company, you're not even looking at, mass kind of audiences. That being said, B2B brands, to build the trust, usually also builds a really strong mass awareness branding. So not just on one-on-one. Like, for example, IBM is a really good example of that, where they have a global image. They've built, Watson. They created like, Jeopardy with Watson, and lots of, much more mass and approachable kind of experiences and activation and same ideas to create talkability and to build the image beyond, a C-level executive, even though this is their audience. Because, also people, at first were students, and, they rose through the ranks, and then they become a C-level executive. But if they know your brand from, forever in their life, they're much more likely to feel the trust right away.
Absolutely, absolutely. Madhukar, coming back to you, Jennifer did mention about B2B, but I just want to approach a topic on B2B2C. And if you look at, she mentioned IBM, but I'll take an example of Intel Inside kind of campaign. Now, it was a campaign and a branding addressed to consumers, but actually it was something that you can't really see. What are your views on this kind of branding and these kind of campaigns? Can it work? It did work, of course, for Intel, but is that the norm? And because I really don't recall any other company trying to do that.
Simple. It's brilliantly done. It's very good. Intel had to bring to light what it is, what sort of a company it is, and what it was doing. And that tiny little sticker of Intel Inside was excellent. They did a very, very good job. Now, remember age-old days about nylon, terrene, all these were brands that were there. What went into it also mattered. Like even aloe vera, in beauty products also they have keratin and things like that. So various people use, they are also brands which are used. It's all a question of a family of sub-brands which go and build a major brand also.
And now, of course, they've come out with some new nomenclatures for molecules and atoms that they show in beauty products on TV cafes, of course, like you said, aloe vera and many other kind of things. Okay. Madhukar, I want to get your views on a very important and sort of a serious topic, what is called ethical marketing or ethical branding. What are your views on that? And there's always, people play on, it's like there's a thin line and there's a rough line, and people don't know when do they cross that line. What's your definition of what is ethical, what is not so ethical kind of branding or advertising? And what's your view on that?
Okay, first of all, I don't think you can mix the two, because I don't know what is ethical branding, because it's building a brand. That's building a brand. Unless you're true to, unless you have a great relationship with the customer, unless there is trust, there's no brand built. So that's I don't know how you can't beat somebody over the head and say, buy my brand, whatever like that. So that doesn't happen. So branding is separate, whereas ethical marketing, I can understand. If you talk about that, definitely you don't cross the line. That it's bound. That's See, otherwise your brand will suffer. It's very, very clear. I mean, if a good brand is been marketed, if you don't stick to the line of, I won't call it just, I mean, there's no such thing as an ethical line, but there are do's and don'ts.
Sure.
The issues of governance, the issues of belief, things that will not diminish the trust that a consumer has in your brand. Unless you turn around and say you do a disservice to the brand if you lie about the brand, if you do not speak the truth about it. So that, I mean, I'm certainly for drawing a line as far as ethical marketing is concerned, but there's no such thing as ethical branding. At least if something's read, I'm not read about it.
Sure. Any specific examples, Madhukar, you can think of where perhaps the ethical marketing, like you said, didn't go right, or the brand took a position or communication was which actually hurt the brand, and either the campaign had to sort of get recalled, or the products got became unsuccessful. Anything that you recall?
Yeah, normally you don't talk ill of the dead. There are several brands that would have died. Don't want to draw this thing, but then there are issues. There are issues which are issues. I mean, if you remember, I think was it what's that phone service which said history will be geography and everything else, Iridium or whatever like that. And there was too much of an overpromise and overkill and things like that. So I wouldn't do that. I mean.
Okay.
So maybe otherwise I can give an example. Sorry, there you go again, Jennifer. After you.
So, if I may comment a little bit on ethical marketing, I mean, when we talk about ethical marketing, essentially we talk about three things, right? Is it morally correct, to market whatever it is that we're marketing? Does it do no harm, right, to people, to animals, to the environment? And that is where, in the way that it's produced, in the way that it's consumed, right? And then, like, a step further beyond doing no harm is like, does it contribute, right, to society, to public good, in a positive way somehow? And I don't think you can be a global brand and be 100% on this, because today the complexity of globalization, of sourcing, of manufacturing, of trading, political corruption, all of this makes it really hard to make truly ethical mass products, while trying to make a product, also a mass product that's available, widely accessible in terms of pricing. It is very, very complex. So today you see like smaller labels, right? Local products, farmers markets type of businesses that are probably fully ethical brands and marketing. But whenever you go and scale, there are always some compromises that have to be made. And I think that is, whether it is like just the shipping, that's already, you're going further from where it's being produced. It's not entirely sustainable, right? So it's, that's kind of the pull and push, and I think trying to be as much as possible on the positive side here is probably where all businesses are trying to be.
But I'm not directly referring to anything as blood diamonds, as they were called then. But there's this famous example of Zara versus Patagonia, where Zara changed the entire fashion cycle from twice a year.
Tom's methods, Ecovert, these are all like ethical brand, but even these have had scandals around, some of the sourcing or some of the manufacturing and so on, despite, being social enterprises first.
True, but that Zara versus Patagonia, where Patagonia put up this ad saying that don't buy this jacket kind of thing, and then they touted it as ethical marketing or ethical branding, because too many clothes and don't need so many jackets kind of thing. So how does that work, or how long can you stay with this kind of positioning?
Yeah, that is specific though to anti-consumerism. So this is a brand that's telling you not to consume. Obviously, this is a bit challenging, right? Because brands are built on growth today, and many have, stakeholders that expect growth. So that is certainly one of the big challenges that we're going to have next few years. And with COVID-19, there's a lot of debates today, right, about how much we should consume and not, and how we need to rethink, the way that we actually spend, our dollars.
Yeah, Deepak, back to you. Now
So
that
just a small
the
point.
yeah,
One more moot issue has been marketing to kids, So, and that's been something that's been raging around as whether it's ethical, yes, no. And building on what Madhukar said, let's leave, there's no concept called ethical, unethical branding. Yeah, let's go to marketing, whether
yeah,
stay in that
yeah.
domain. So, see, as a company, let me give an example of Mondelez. We were one of the first signatories to this pledge of not advertising to kids below 12 years. See, it's a pledge, mind you. I don't
Mhm.
think there's any regulation around it, right? So you will never
Yeah.
find us advertising on the kids channel. We'll never be selling in schools.
Okay.
We'll never advertise in school events. This is
Oh,
purely
wow. Okay.
because we believe, as a signatory to the pledge, that the kids below 12 years are yet developing their prowess on judgment. So it's unfair
Mhm.
to advertise, right? And hence we
Okay.
do all our branding. None of this, including let's say Bonvita, you will never find it. Though Bonvita is clinically proven to be good for kids, you will never find us advertising Bonvita on kids channel. And that's a philosophy. Now, what is ethical about this? What is non-ethical? For Bonvita, you can argue that this is a product that's actually good for the kids, right? So, and hence,
Mhm.
what's the harm in putting it up there? So, I mean, this is a debate
Sure.
that keeps that this is a mood debate. It keeps raging. So, I think everybody takes a position on this. But I think a nice way for marketeers to think about this is, I think, a very nice phrase that Deepak Parekh just recently said in a very
Mhm.
different context about building HDFC. He said, "The softest pillow is a clear conscience." So if you feel that
Mhm.
this is right, and I genuinely believe in this, and you can sleep well, right? I mean, be my guest. And if you feel, I know this is not a pillow that I'm used to sleeping, then you have a different point of view.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. Madhukar, we've been talking of brand and how they grow and the trust and the reliability part. But I'm sure there comes a time when companies, brand owners, and along with communication groups like yourself, their partners, decide to sort of kill the brand, if I can use that word. How does that process happen? I mean, for example, there are multiple examples where companies have taken over in an M&A situation and just kill the brand and put their own brand. We know a story of Flipkart where it's still alive, kicking, and you don't see any, other than business knowledge, there's no evidence that a large company has taken over that the brand, or you have Insta or you have WhatsApp, where slowly there is a small tagline which says Insta by Facebook or WhatsApp by Facebook. We had a client into the internet space, broadband space, and they took over a company and they took nearly 2.5 years with their agency to move from the original brand to the mother brand. So how does this process of either killing that brand on your own or when you acquire another brand, how do you sort of do that?
Number one, you never kill a golden goose. That's very clear.
Yes, of
So
course.
if you
Thumbs
if
up
you
if you will, yeah.
recognize if you recognize that, then you won't kill a brand even if you acquire it. But
Sure.
there's a thing called egos. Now, brands, I said,
Yeah.
are living organisms, but there are
Yes.
marketeers and there are CEOs. Okay. Now, corporate egos at times do not allow you to truly recognize what you are referring to intangible, the brand value. I mean, Deepak can
Yeah.
elaborate on, let's take the cola wars. Okay.
Mhm.
Coke came into the country, bought Thumbs Up. Thumbs Up was ragingly well. So the normal thing is, here's this huge global brand, and here's this insignificant Thumbs Up in the country. And reportedly, at that point in time, every single effort was made to not to starve it. Much like we heard Eklavya talk about Facebook doing things to keep away some things from Instagram, yet Instagram is growing. Okay. And so what happened after consciously trying, I mean, Thumbs Up for years was the largest selling cola for years.
Yeah.
So that's when
Sure.
there are lessons to be learned in different countries. So you don't exactly kill a brand. Okay. You normally ease out a brand which no longer contributes to the corporate, to the company, or no longer connects with the audience, or no longer meets norms which are there, which are newer norms which have come in either quality or like I say, advertising or communication or anything else. You don't go around consciously killing a brand. But what I heard you mention about a case is migrating. I mean, if a company acquires and wants to migrate over to the, now that's you moving from one company brand to a different company brand. Those are different issues. You don't exactly kill it. You migrate the goodwill that is residing in that earlier brand onto your brand. So if Facebook is trying to say Insta by Facebook, I guess Facebook wants to bolster up its brand by using the trust that is there in Instagram.
Absolutely. Deepak, can you views on this? There's a sub question to that. Being a global company, how do you sort of, while acquisitions would happen, and how do you ensure that you take care of local sensitivities, local cultures, while maintaining the global kind of context of the brand?
It's a good subject, and I think the rules are very clear, Advait. I think so. Number one, any brand needs to have a brand architecture. You need to have a brand playbook. The brand architecture tells you what it stands for, and you need to understand that as a local marketeer. It gives you a playbook which says what you can do, what you cannot do. After that, how you manifest an idea is something that's completely for a local marketeer to do. So, for example, let's say Cadbury Dairy Milk is right now espousing generosity. Right? So the way you see a UK commercial, it's a small girl trading her toys with a shopkeeper to buy a CDM bar for her mom on her birthday. Whereas in India, it's a brother who sacrifices his CDM for his younger sibling's joy, or the smile that he can see on his brother's face, right? Now, both are great creatives. In a different context, the manifestation could be very different. Now, or for example, let's take one of the previous campaigns of Coke called Open Happiness. So if you saw the way they manifested this, in India it was all around that jingle, I forget the jingle that was there. Whereas in Africa it was about a billion happy hearts. So completely different manifestations. But then they had the brand architecture. They had the theme was clear, and was all about to speak about happiness. And culturally, you can manifest it very differently, I think. So that creative, or let's say that adaptation to the culture or the local context is extremely critical. At the same time, maintaining the architecture of the brand is equally important. But I think these are well done, well-established principles these days.
Absolutely. Jennifer, can I come back to you, Madhukar, after you come back?
Sure. That was an example. That's right.
Yeah,
Sure.
actually,
Jennifer,
an interesting example was Apple had a brand called Newton Computers. I don't know if you remember that. It was an early version of a tablet computer, right? And actually, to contradict one example that contradicts a bit Madhukar's point, is that it had actually a pretty big cult following, and it had a significant financial contribution to the brand. But in terms of image, it was starting to be perceived as being a bit stuck in time, right? There was newer, sleeker technology, so this brand was, not helping the Apple aura, so they killed the brand, even though it was at the time financially lucrative. So I think it's both. Sure. It's both the financial contribution, but it's also the branding contribution.
Yeah.
Sure. The question I wanted to ask you, Jennifer, is about this cultural part and the local sensitivities part of it. Now, you work with global brands, and in fact, you work them in the Middle East. And on one hand, we can say Middle East is one big Arabic-speaking kind of continent, but I'm sure within country to country there are cultural differences, and it's not just the vernacularization. Convert the copy from English to Arabic, and so the localization happens. So, what are the challenges that you faced when you work with global brands, but they have to suit the sensibilities in a particular region or a particular culture?
Well, not all global brands have to. I think there are two schools of thoughts and two types of brands, right? So let's say you have global brands like Apple or Evian or Burberry, where it's essentially the school of a one brand everywhere, and the local adaptation is mostly avoiding local taboos, right? It's just like ensuring that you're not offending anyone, right? So for instance, for Apple, we removed dogs in ads in the Middle East because it's not well perceived in Islam. But on the other hand, then you have, and this is mostly brands that are premium or aspirational, right? Because they're selling one image to everyone. Then you have more what we call the global brands, right? So most FMCG brands fit there, right? Which is essentially we define one global belief system, like, right, Cadbury had joy, or Coca-Cola had happiness, or Snickers has hunger. And then you adapt these locally through the executions, right? And obviously in the Middle East, for instance, even the humor is different, right? Obviously the language is different. Let's say Egypt and Saudi have different types of Arabic. And even within Saudi, you'll have Jadawi versus you'll have, more like Riyadh type of Arabic. So, and then depending on the type of brands, you want to go like very, very local if you want to be like street culture kind of brand, or you would use something called white Arabic to just like adapt it to the overall region. So even that is really a strategy in how much.
Same goes for India also, because they say culture changes, language changes every 100 to 100 kilometers. So yeah, I think the same would be true for India as well. Yeah, Madhukar, I stopped you from saying something.
No, because what Jennifer did was fantastic in terms of explaining some of the examples. What popped in my mind when Deepak was talking was, let's take Unilever. Dirt is Good is a global platform, but Daag Achhe Hai was a brilliant exposition as far as India was concerned, both culturally right, said, executed very well, and left it very, very memorable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I've got a lot of questions and I'm trying to paraphrase and sort of, some of them. Two questions related to, or at least from my side, I'm sort of joining them. One is, again, going back to the emotional connect that we talked about with customers. So again, is it different from, say, premium B2B brands versus a B2C brand? Is there a difference of emotional connect? Vikas Joshi has asked that question. And Devendra Shinde has asked a similar question in terms of who owns the brand. Is it the consumers who own the brand, or is it the brand owner? Who are the brand custodians? Maybe Madhukar, you can.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yours.
Yeah, Madhukar, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll make it very short. Just one concept that's interesting to answer this. We talk about magnet and mirror brands, right? So magnet brands or aspirational brands that are meant to essentially, they have an idea, they have a lifestyle, they have something, and they attract you to it. Mirror brands are meant to reflect your life, right? So they're more into the intimacy and understanding the local customs, and they need to dive deeper. And it's a little bit similar to the differentiation that I was using earlier.
Okay, lovely.
For me, Advait, the brands belong to the consumer. There's no debate about that at all. Brands are made by the consumer. The brand custodians are different, different. The consumer belongs. Now, belonging is not custodianship. Let's be very clear. The custodianship is in the company. Now, in the company, there are it's not the CEO is not the brand custodian. The marketing head is not the brand custodian. Everybody in the company is a brand custodian, because every interaction, everything that it's like this. Everything that Cadbury does is more important than what Cadbury says. So what you do is more important than what you say. That's why, if I go back to the start when Jennifer mentioned what Nike's done, innovation, etc., what it's done has been significantly more than what it said.
Yeah,
so there is a difference.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Deepak, you were smiling. So you have something to add to what Madhukar said?
No, I completely endorse what both Jennifer and Madhukar said. Nothing more to add on this. I think well said.
Okay.
If I may add something on that, Advait, I think when you look at some brands that have lost contact with the consumers, right? So brands like Jell-O, Victoria's Secret, Kodak, Toys R Us, Like, let's take Victoria's Secret as an example, right? If we look 15 years back, they defined what is sexy in the world, right? They had the angels and the lingerie shows, you know, they launched the careers of so many top models. And then culture shifted. Sure. Consumers started, you know, caring about natural beauty, body positivity, you know, and they still kept advocating perfection. They lost relevance, and now they're closing 250 stores and beyond, right? They were almost at bankruptcy last year. So this is what happens when we stop thinking that the brand belongs to the consumers and that we stop listening to where the world is going.
Yeah, okay, that's a very valid example. Madhukar, coming back to you on another serious topic, I want to go and start with you.
We've been discussing only serious topics. Branding is a very serious topic all through.
Yeah, of course. So I want to talk on what is normally called brand activism. You know, especially in today's time, a lot of brands, you know, historically we've seen, say, UCB, United Colors of Benetton, doing very bold and brave ads, taking a stand on several issues, often, you know, leading to issues that they had. Recently, Nike came out with this, you know, instead of just do it, don't do it kind of thing. Amul has had its share, you know, historically, they've always had tongue-in-cheek kind of cartoons, and recently they came out with something which Twitter actually pulled down and then apologized, and it came back again. So how does this work between a brand owner and the agency that works with it? How do you decide in terms of, you know, is it related to the company's core values, or is it related to the company leader's core values, or how does that entire activism operate?
Okay, good question. From my own experience and my own belief systems, I wouldn't go to the extent of calling it brand activism. I'm talking of how do brands speak in a voice that is more relevant to society and yet without turning away its customers. So that brand, I mean, it's a question of a conscious assessment. It's got nothing to do with the CEO or whatever like that. Anybody who is defining that communication or defining the boundaries in which the brand is going to be speaking has to take that conscious call to ensure that, okay, I might support a particular social cause or activity or a trend, but then I need to be careful that I do not even turn away one consumer. That's very clear. You can't talk of brand activism getting into this. And what Benetton did was slightly different. It's not brand activism. Okay, Benetton took a stand of, or let's take a stand on various things which are completely away, just to make sure that we get noticed.
Sure. But you know, I was looking at some research done by you know, Comscore, and across 3 geographies that they did, a majority of the consumers that they polled were neutral about the brands they love taking any stand, like you said. I mean, the highest percentage, positive percentage, was in US, quite expectedly, where only 15% said that, yeah, my brand needs to take a stand on this issue. 15% became 10% in UK, and 10% became 6% in India. So does it really? So, and on one hand, we are saying, you know, brand is owned by the consumers. You need to have a ear to the ground. You know, she gave an example in terms of how irrelevant one can be if you don't change. Now, how do you rationalize this? That, you know, I'm taking a stand without calling it an activism, but perhaps bulk of my consumers really don't care. Are neutral. Deepak, you want to go ahead?
Okay, so let me start with where you started, Amul, right? Let's take the example of Amul.
Yeah.
Here is what Mr. R.S. Sondi, who heads Amul, said just earlier this week, right? He made a very nice statement. I think it's a brilliant statement. He said the Amul butter girl has and will comment on the mood of the nation, something like that. And he said she doesn't fear or favor anyone, right? And hence, there's nothing wrong in this Abhay. This is a concept called movement marketing. It has been advocated by Amul so brilliantly over decades, correct?
Yeah.
And if you are consistent with the position you take like Amul, the position they are taking is that I will reflect the mood of the nation. That is the position, right? And if that is the mood of the nation, and for some it is not palatable, like Amul said, I don't care. I mean, it will. So this kind of positions over a period of time will be accepted and actually liked and looked forward by the consumer, right? Now, except in other cases when a brand stands for something and there's a very mood issue that's happening and the brand decides to take a strong position on that, which is equally the right thing to do. I think broadly you need to ask yourself as a CEO, as a marketeer, as an agency partner, or anybody in the marketing ecosystem of that brand. I think ask yourself two questions: are you doing it because you stood for it, or are you doing it to leverage the situation? If it is the latter, don't do it. Ask another question: will your consumers and other stakeholders feel you're doing it for a selfish reason? If so, don't do it. I mean, the broad yardstick should be these. I think, that defines, because a consumer today is very aware. She or he can very easily catch whether you're actually faking it or whether you're genuinely going to be standing for that, right? And see, you do something today, it can't be for today. Moment marketing is capturing the moments of today, but in perpetuity. So you can't say I took a stand 10 years ago and I'm changing my stand, magically to exactly the opposite sometime later. So
you can change the brand ambassador. The same guy is promoting Pepsi today and then he was promoting Coca-Cola a few years ago. That can happen, but not your stand.
So now that is for that celebrity to think about. I don't believe that's right. So anyway, that's my personal view.
Sure. Jennifer, this is about moment marketing, taking a stand. But, Amul, of course, is an Indian brand, largely an Indian brand, of course, it's exported. But the brand is Indian. Now, what happens when a global brand kind of takes a stand? And, when you're selling, in this case, if you take a stand, which is mood of the nation, but you're also selling the same brand to the other nation. How do you manage this dichotomy? Or such brands keep away from being active or taking a stand?
Look, I would say two things to that, and then maybe just one before. I would challenge the fact that moments marketing is brand activism, right? And that Amul, to Deepak's point, I think is really moments marketing. They talk about, after you sent it, I researched, right? They talk about having no bias. And I think that is exactly the opposite of activism, right? Activism is taking a stand. They are kind of, going with a cartoon that's, as he was saying, like captures, something that is happening. And it's more strategy based on fame and word of mouth and maybe a bit of scandal, right? It's like a Virgin kind of, a Richard Branson's kind of strategy. But when it comes to activism, Nike founder Phil Knight, he actually said, it doesn't matter how many people hate your brand as long as enough love it. And that exactly is the opposite thinking of what Madhukar was saying. And I think this is where you have exactly the two types of brands when it comes to activism. There are brands who are true activists, right? And they will take very clear divisive stances, right? On, I don't know, homosexual marriage, for instance, right? They'll just make a stand on something like this. And usually here, the company's belief system is clearly defined, it's consistent, and there's usually a clear leader that is supporting that, right? A lot of, Silicon Valley companies, for instance, have this type of leadership that defines, these kind of very strong stance. Then most companies, and especially global brands, right? Global brands and corporations have to stay neutral. They have to not create alienation. So most big international groups, they can have CSR, they can have activism, but focusing on few issues like sustainability or things that really felt, in an acceptable way in a global cultural context. And that's, how you manage this, because you just don't take, extreme stands.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We are seriously running out of time, but one last point, just to take on what you mentioned, and I wanted to maybe ask is you mentioned about Richard Branson, Virgin Group, and I want to talk about branding in a different context. The corporate branding, the employer branding and the leader branding. Common question to all of you, maybe we can start with Jennifer. What are your views in terms of, because on one hand, if you take a stand, you might lose, like you said, a lot of customers might hate to you, but as long as there are enough customers who love you, it's okay. So, would that affect your employer brand? Would that affect your leader brand?
Yeah, obviously, brands that depend on leadership branding, you know, it's a case of love it or hate it, right? So that's definitely what it is. But when you look at first generation businesses, a lot of them are built on a strong leader with powerful branding. Like Chanel had Coco Chanel, you know, and Ford had obviously Henry Ford, you know. Even Apple had Steve Jobs, and even if you go back further, Campbell Soup, you know, also is the name of the owner, right? So the leaders.
Would you say the same about Tesla?
Yeah, and of course Tesla, right? But you know, the leaders help, like Elon Musk, right? They help accelerate the brand by being an embodiment, a spokesperson for the values, right? And that's good, especially at the beginning when they need, you know, to have a very strong voice, you know, that's clear and that's loud. The challenge is what happens when the leader disappears, right? So, for example, Apple or Chanel a longer time ago, right? The people who took over managed to keep the values and the idea that made the brand special, but created longevity, right, for the brand and the business beside the personality cult of the founder. Now, Tesla and Virgin, will they be able to do that? When it happens, that's still up for debate, you know, because these are brands that don't have at all a culture of advertising, of brand building, you know, very little besides the founder, right? It's a lot built around the founders.
True. Fair enough. Thanks. Great. Deepak, any views on this? Employer brand, leader brand?
So two separate subjects. So let's go first on leader brand. So it's a mood subject. I think we have had very charismatic and very successful leaders whose personal branding has been in some cases bigger than the company's, right? So you rightly mentioned Elon or Richard Branson of Virgin, right? And we have examples in India, Mr. Tata, Mr. Birla, right? So let's not forget that. I don't think we need to go so far out to figure out that there were some people who were so powerful and so charismatic that they built brands, right? So the way I would look at it very simplistically, it works for these companies. Treat it like a celebrity endorsement. I think the key question is what Jennifer just asked. So if you want your brands to last in perpetuity, what happens when someday they hang up their boots and say, I'm going into retirement? Right? That's the key question that you need to fend with. Now, by that time, if the brand has itself assumed enormous potential and proportions, I mean, the job is done. I mean, you didn't have to pay a celebrity for this, and you just got it done by your leader. I mean, that's the way to look at leader branding. Now, employer branding or employer value proposition is a completely different game. Right? So I think that has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen because you had a great brand, right? So you need to be clear that this is very important because it builds your reputation with both internal and external stakeholders. Employer branding starts at home. Firstly, your employees need to feel very happy, cared, and proud to work. And a broad set of actions are required to do this, and with intentionality. Equally, there are external cohorts. What are you talking to the campus? This is your future employees. Are you talking to your alumni? These are the people who help you build your brand, and they have a big word of mouth about your corporation outside. Are you talking to the authorities? They have a point of view of how you're behaving as a corporate citizen. Right? Now, unless and until you build it intentionally, otherwise it can catch up. In today's age and time, I think
you have to take care of the entire ecosystem. It's not just the absolutely. Madhukar, final words.
I think both, no, not final words. I think applaud both Jennifer and Deepak for having elucidated it so very well. For me, it's simple. I mean, there are just two straight points that came up when they were talking. You know, what is very interesting, it's a subject for a different webinar, is Elon Musk and Tesla. Elon Musk is an individual brand. Tesla is also a brand. Tesla is a brand which is rooted in what it delivers, whatever like that. Okay, and Elon Musk as a leader, it's quite different. He's got a different personality and different psyche. So that's a completely different debate. But in terms of employer brand or the corporate brand, like take for an NGO that I'm associated with, any NGO that people are associated with, what is important is not just the identity. What is important that everybody in that ecosystem is the brand custodian, because how you interact on the ground with the recipient is as important as how you interact with the donor on the other side. So everybody in the company is a brand custodian. It's not just one person.
I know I said last question, but one sub question, because you mentioned Elon Musk Tesla was, being Maverick, is it part of a conscious strategy to sort of enhance the brand image of both yourself and the company, whether it's Virgin or whether it's Tesla?
See, Mavericks will always be Mavericks. I don't think you need to be a maverick to build a brand. There's several people. I don't think Steve Jobs was a maverick. I don't think Walt Disney was a maverick.
Sure.
Okay, Ratan Tata was not a maverick.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think we've seriously shot over time. So, but thank you so much for this wonderful session, this wonderful experience sharing, and answering some of the questions. There are more questions that are there, of course, which we couldn't take up, but we'll try and do that offline. Thank you once again, Jennifer, Deepak, Madhukar, thanks for your time, and thanks for sharing your experiences. Thank you. And
Thank you.
for the audience, thank you for staying back this late. Thank you, National HRD Network. Thanks to HRD Pune for supporting us all through. Our next session is planned on 17th of July. We had broached a topic in terms of brand activism and taking a stand, and given what things are going right now, so our next month's topic is going to be discrimination, conscious and unconscious. We also have a fantastic panel as always next time as well, and hope many of you will be able to join. Thank you once again. Thanks Deepak, thanks Jennifer, thanks Madhukar.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.